All right, I thought it was a good time for another live since I'm back in San Francisco. New York City, Los Angeles, both in the rearview mirror. 49ers are at home coming up this weekend against the New England Patriots. It's not a good New England team. It's not a good New England defense. So Brock Purdy, who has been dominant, should be in position for another big game. And when we talk about how dominant Brock Purdy has been, well, we should take a look at where he's been with adjustments. Take a quick peek at some of these numbers. There he is, top of the list. So they chart expected points added per play and expected points added per game. And Brock Purdy does not rank number one there. But he has not gotten a lot of help from his teammates this year, his receivers, in terms of drops. Obviously, Javon Jennings is catching everything thrown his way, but Brandon Ayuk isn't. Ronnie Bell certainly isn't. And when you factor in the receiver drops, Brock Purdy leapfrogs Derek Carr, Josh Allen, and Kyler Murray for the number one spot on this adjusted EPA and PFF grade leaderboard. So once the EPA adjustments for expected points added per play are factored in here, Brock Purdy scores a perfect 100. His PFF grade has him at 97. And according to this, it averages out 98, 99 ahead of Derek Carr and Josh Allen. You could look at this. This is the total expected points added adjustments, which again has Purdy in that number one spot above Josh Allen. Red means that more points were lost in the adjustments, and green means that some points were added. The drop score for Brock Purdy, because of all the drops, he actually improves in the adjustment category. When you look at the adjusted score for Brock Purdy, there's a 0.5 for weather. That's interesting to me. I guess the 49ers played. SoFi's technically outside, but the only real game exposed to elements was at Levi's in week one. Anyway, the adjusted EPA for Purdy ends up being 36.6. Sizable lead over Josh Allen. And look at that, Jaden Daniels. He was special the other night. Really good performance from the rookie. This is also a Brock Purdy stat. Take a look at this. This is XY axis, amount of air yard targets over 12 yards down the field. So deeper targets, I would say, that's on the longer range of intermediate to deeper targets. But anything over 12 yards will qualify a quarterback for a deeper pass. The more of those, the further to the right he is. And then the catch rate of those deeper passes is on the vertical axis. So you want to be upper right. We saw Brock Purdy in the upper right all last season with stats like this. Look where he's at now. This is a Brock Purdy stat. Then, you could give some credit to Javon Jennings too. But Purdy is the common denominator here. Remember where he is there on the upper right. And let's talk a little bit about where Brock Purdy was last season. He completed 60% of his passes that traveled 20 or more yards downfield. 60%. Nobody on PFF's record had even come close. The average for a quarterback on throws that travel 20 or more yards downfield is under 50%. Purdy was at 64% for most of last season. Also, he was the most efficient quarterback we'd ever seen on throws that travel between 10 and 20 air yards downfield. So he was perfect with the intermediates. Great example of an intermediate throw that just diced up the Rams defense was that post to Javon Jennings that hit Jennings in stride. Tight window, but Purdy beats the linebacker trying to come over. And then because he hits Jennings in stride, he sets up yards after the catch, and he increases his efficiency on throws from 10 to 20 yards downfield. I think that throw counted in this graph. That's why Brock Purdy and the 49ers are in the upper right. Then this is just a quick look at the receiver chart that I showed so much last season and into this offseason. This is separation grade on the x-axis and catch point and yak grade on the y-axis. So you want to be further to the right, further up. Brandon Ayuk was in Chris Olave territory last year, up here where I'm circling with my cursor. Brandon Ayuk is not having nearly as good of a season so far. All the data suggests that Brandon Ayuk is not separating as well and is not catching the football as well. I think as far as catching the football, we've seen that already. A couple footballs that Ayuk seemed to have caught last season, similar type of footballs that he has dropped this year. So Ayuk has been very average. He's right here near the origin of this graph. But look where Jawan Jennings is, circling his name. Jawan Jennings is in the upper right. He may not be where Nico Collins is or where Chris Olave is, but Jawan Jennings is playing really, really high level football, as is his quarterback, Brock Purdy, at the top of all these lists. Impressive, impressive stuff. Where's the opponent this week? Where's Jacoby Brissett? 49ers are playing the Patriots. I'm looking for, here's Brissett. Brissett ranked 19th on this QB chart. His score is a 60, so he's below average, or right at about average. There's 36 quarterbacks. Bryce Young scores a 0, as you can tell here. Skylar Thompson, none of this is good. Caleb Williams, not good. Will Levis, boy, he's been terrible. Go up here, and Brock Purdy has a 99 score. So a lot of the objective measures are placing Brock Purdy back to where he was at the end of last season. He was number one on top of all these measures. He didn't have to make adjustments last year, though. I mean, just the raw numbers for Brock Purdy, even including 49ers drops, were good enough to put him far and away ahead of everybody else at that number one spot. This year, he's not gotten nearly as much help from his offense. So the 49ers, with their elite quarterback, need to supply some help. I think the title of one of my videos right after the 49ers played the Rams and lost and blew that game was "Somebody Come and Help Brock Purdy and Jawan Jennings," because the 49ers defense certainly isn't doing that. When we talk about the matchup, though, this week, the 49ers get to play a Patriots defense that isn't very good. They traded Matthew Judon away to Atlanta. New England did manage to beat the Cincinnati Bengals in week 1, but that's increasingly looking like it wasn't that impressive, given the fact that the Bengals haven't beaten anybody. The Patriots are number 27 in defensive EPA through the first 3 weeks. They held Joe Burrow and company to only 10 points in that week 1 matchup. Then last week, we saw on Thursday Night Football that Aaron Rodgers was able to execute a methodical game plan to dismantle New England. And I think that Brock Purdy is going to be in position to do something similar. Offense, generally not the problem for the 49ers. Sure, you had the Ronnie Bell drop. You have some of the injuries that San Francisco's dealing with, but they've got a superstar quarterback, and I think he'll be just fine against that New England defense. I don't even think there's much reason to obsess over all too many matchups with New England. They run a lot of disguises up front. They're, Kyle Shanahan was saying, I don't think much has changed since Bill Belichick left. Yeah, maybe the later years of the Bill Belichick era when that operation in New England was not the tight ship that it was before. But the last time the 49ers faced Bill Belichick was in 2020, and they carved him up on the road. And that, of course, those are the late stage Patriots. That was Cam Newton. That was the year after Tom Brady had left to Tampa Bay. But Jimmy Garoppolo and the 49ers carved up New England. I still remember Brandon Ayuk catching a deeper ball downfield that was in front of an empty stadium. This time, New England comes to the Bay Area for the first time since 2016. Brady was on that team in 2016 playing at Levi Stadium, year before I started covering the 49ers. A little bit of an initial preview. I talked about the 49ers and their run defense against the Patriots and their run defense in general. This is something that we definitely need to delve into because I think it's the biggest key for the 49ers defensively. This is the article up on the San Francisco Standard. I've gotten some questions about this, how you sign up. You just go to the San Francisco Standard's website, sfstandard.com. You'll see my work, or you can go to this link in the description. And as soon as you start scrolling down, you can fill in your email. Something will pop up here where you can fill in your email, and you'll get all of the articles in your email, and you'll have a chance to read all about the 49ers. So this was my piece today. I included some of the quarterback data in the piece, but I mainly talked about the fact that the 49ers run defense is ranked number 28 by EPA per play in the NFL. I think that needs to be better, especially when you look at something like this. Could make this a little bit bigger in case you don't see. Run defense ranks by season for the 49ers. Highlight it. 2021 and 2022, they were number 2 in the league. 2023, that was last season, they dropped to number 26. 2024, all the way down to number 28. That's only through 3 games, but it's a little too evocative of last year's number. And, I opened this up because I'm talking about losing Javon Hargrave likely for the season. When I open this up, I talk about the old Arden Key quote that I see other teams have adopted since then. Stop the run, and we can have some fun. If the 49ers cannot stop run games more effectively than they have over the course of the past couple weeks, they're not really going to have a chance to pin their ears back and get after opposing quarterbacks. There's other stuff that goes into fueling the pass rush. The secondary obviously has to be better. I'm going to be writing more about that later this week as I preview the 49ers and the Patriots. But the run defense is the initial prerequisite. Because the way things work in football is if you can't stop the run, people are just going to run it down your throat before you prove that you can slow it down. And at that point, they move to the passing game. But if they have no reason to go to that passing game earlier, they won't go to that passing game earlier. So you have to stop the run. And Javon Hargrave, there was so much misinformation about him. I think he started really slowly in weeks 1 and 2, only 3 pressures. And then people were spreading one clip on Javon Hargrave this past week, and they're like, oh, he's not trying, he's loafing. That clip likely took place after he had torn his triceps muscle. So I think that maybe context and waiting would have been important. But it also took place after Hargrave was working his ass off all game, and he notched 5 pressures to lead the 49ers team. But as you saw in that game against the Rams, despite the fact that the defensive line had his best game pressuring Matthew Stafford, the 49ers didn't have many good results to go for it. Yeah, they got to Stafford a couple times, but they also gave up 27 points to an offense that hadn't been good. And you say, okay, why? They got pressure, but pressure's not the be-all, end-all. The pressure has to tie in with the coverage on the back end. Stafford or whatever quarterback is back there can't just be allowed to release the ball when pressure's in his face and notch a big completion. So I think there were coverage breakdowns for the 49ers. I think that Nick Sorensen's defensive play calling obviously must improve. There are models that rank play callers in the league. Shanahan, in one of the models I saw today, was ranked number 7 amongst offensive play callers, and Nick Sorensen was down at around number 23 to number 25 amongst defensive play callers. Based on the results the 49ers are getting versus, what would be expected in each situation. And I think it was clear as day that the 49ers are not tying the coverage to the pass rush. And I think that one of the ways that you can tie the two together much more easily is if you put yourself into good down and distance. And the key there is to stop the run. So when Javon Hargrave went down, I immediately started thinking strategy for the 49ers. What does this mean strategically for San Francisco? And I know that, when we look at this data right here on the 49ers run defense, it's what I just put up on the screen, and I'll put it up again. There was a precipitous drop-off in between 2022 when they last had the number 1 defense in the league and 2023 when they dropped down to number 26 in run defense EPA per play. It just so happens that Javon Hargrave joined the team in 2023 when this dropped down. 2022, the year where the 49ers were number 2 in run defense, saw San Francisco not have an interior pass rush. That was one of their weaknesses in 2022. They only had 4 combined sacks out of all of their defensive tackles. So I think that the 49ers overcorrected by going out and signing a prized free agent in Javon Hargrave, one of the better interior pass rushers in the game, to fix the lack of an interior rush. They got that, and I wrote about that all here. But what ended up happening is that the run defense fell off because they became much more focused on the pass rushing. So, and the same has kind of carried over here into the start of 2024. Now, though, Hargrave is hurt. So that means, where do the 49ers go? What kind of strength so they're going to find in a backup? Do they trade for somebody like DJ Jones? What exactly is the status of everything? Well, this is a very interesting time to be going into defensive tackle depth because Between Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson, the Patriots have two of the most bruising running backs in the league at about 227, 228 pounds. So the 49ers, who have struggled to contain or stop the run over the past 2 weeks, are now going to be facing a team that is built around the run and built around the heavy run. And it's going to be a big-time test for the 49ers. Hargrave, as we've said, not the greatest run defender. He's a pass rusher for the 49ers. But regardless of what was going to happen moving forward from week 2, even if Hargrave were perfectly healthy, I was going to show up here on this show. I was going to do a live, and I was going to say the 49ers run defense needs to improve. Something that I was really critical of even when they were winning last year. I said the 49ers run defense needs to improve because that's going to be the domino effect for everything. And my question is, without Hargrave, how the 49ers are going to approach this personnel-wise, and are they going to be strategic and smart about this and saying, hey, we can't replicate Hargrave's pass rush production. This guy's one of the best in the game. It's unrealistic to think that the 49ers can pick somebody up that can replicate that. But maybe the 49ers try to improve in a more economical, efficient way, and that is by improving the run defense, which, again, is ranked number 28 in the league so far this season by EPA per play. Somebody like Jordan Elliott, and if you go to the standard, click on the link. It's in the description. You can go read it for free. Jordan Elliott's a 320-pounder the 49ers picked up. He was with the Cleveland Browns last year. Nick Bosa had some really complimentary things to say about him. He could be the guy that goes from 20 snaps a game to about 40 snaps a game. And then Yetur Gross-Matos can go from like 7 snaps inside to 20 snaps inside. You've got to replace about 35 snaps a game from Javon Hargrave. Jordan Elliott is such an intriguing player, though, because he's a run stopper. He's much bigger than the 49ers' typical defensive tackle, but they think he can move well enough to make it work for them at that position. If that reminds you of anybody, maybe it reminds you of DJ Jones. DJ Jones, I mean, as a side note, he's in the final year of his contract with the Denver Broncos. So, and he was last responsible for a top-ranked 49ers run defense. So it's worth keeping our eye out on all of these possibilities, but especially the ones on the roster. Anyway, that's the focus of my piece today. I thought I would delve into things on the level of what is the 49ers' biggest weakness. And statistically right now, it is that run defense. They're in the 20s across the board defensively, but they're number 28 on run defense, and it's something that people aren't going to pay nearly as much attention to. But this is, yes, you've got to stop the deep passes. Yes, you have to convert better defensively on third down. But the way you put yourself into position to do those things is through the run defense. So opponents don't have good play action platforms. So your defensive linemen can pin their ears back and make the opposing QB a whole lot more uncomfortable. So all of these questions are magnified and put further into the walls of scrutiny here because Javon Hargrave did just tear his triceps muscle. And it's going to be really interesting to see what the 49ers do behind him. I mean, speaking of that, we can open up the San Francisco depth chart now. Take a look at it. See the 90-man depth chart. I actually have to get this open on another screen. But as soon as I have that there, I'm going to transfer it to the screen for you. Actually, it looks like we have to stop the share and start a new one. Here we go. So this is a look at the 49ers 90-man depth chart. And as you can see, when we zoom in, Hargrave isn't there anymore. They're not going to officially put him onto injured reserve probably until Saturday. So I've slotted Jordan Elliott, the 320-pounder, who reminds them of DJ Jones as far as the size that he brings to the table, into a starting role. Kevin Givens has been a rotational guy behind him. they've had 4 defensive tackles before on the 53, so they're likely to add one more to take Hargrave's old spot. I think that is a competition between 3 guys, and I got to add one to the roster here because they just made a move today. Evan Anderson, the undrafted rookie out of Florida Atlantic, T.Y. McGill, the veteran, and we'll put the third option, Shaquille Brown, who was with this team after trying out in the offseason through training camp. He was then cut after the end of training camp, but now he's back in the building to fill out the 49ers practice squad. So one of these 3 guys may get a 53-man roster call-up. 49ers currently have 2 53-man roster spots available. All right, Purdy dominant. The 49ers defense against New England, overmatched opponent this week, and the 49ers can't blow it against an overmatched opponent this week. It's as simple as that moving forward. We still don't know exactly what this team is all about this year. We have an idea that the offense is going to be really good. We've seen Brock Purdy play at a dominant level, and there have been big-time alarm bells going off on the defensive side of the football for the 49ers. That being said, only 3 games have been played. They got a Hall of Fame caliber player in Fred Warner. They got one of the best in the game in Nick Bosa. I don't think they're devoid of talent elsewhere in that defense. They've got an all-pro in Talanoa Hufanga coming back from injury right now as we speak. They've got an all-pro from last year in Charvarius Ward who's been banged up. They've got a cornerback that's been playing great football in Diomedor Lenore. I mean, this is not a talent-devoid 49ers defense, but they've got to play better football, and it needs to start happening soon. So we're going to withhold judgment until they have the adequate amount of runway time to show what they're truly about. And this week is huge because the Patriots weren't expected to be good, and they haven't looked good so far this year. So they definitely do appear to be a inferior opponent, and good teams are able to beat up on inferior opponents. That's what the 49ers have a chance to do on Sunday. Harry says that DeAndre Campbell isn't very good. Well, I don't think the 49ers drafted him thinking that he was great. I think that they needed to fill in or they didn't draft him. They signed him. But they needed to fill in for Dre Greenlaw. They initially went to Eric Kendricks, but Kendricks backed out and signed with the Dallas Cowboys. So in effect, the second option was DeAndre Campbell. As you can see here, they were trying to go further into the depth during this game against the Rams. That would have been D. Winters, but D. Winters has now hurt his ankle. Demetrius Flanagan-Foles didn't look good at all against the Los Angeles Rams. He had that slip. It looked like the turf monster got him. And Tatum Bethune is still a rookie who's a developmental guy. So the realistic option to grab the torch is D. Winters, who currently has that hurt ankle. Dre Greenlaw probably won't be back until around the middle of the season. What do the numbers look like at the linebacker position outside Warner? Devondre Campbell gave up about, I think, 30 to 50 receiving yards. I forgot what the exact amount was, but I do know that he gave up the pass interference penalty or the hold or whatever they called on him at the end of the game. It was a 25-yard penalty. It wasn't good. Anytime that Devondre Campbell, at this age especially, is covering in open space at crunch time, you're asking to get victimized by Matthew Stafford downfield. Any veteran quarterback is going to see that matchup, and he's going to go after it. And they caught Devondre Campbell in a compromised coverage position against the Rams on Sunday. Listen, he was an all-pro in 2021, but last year, no linebacker in the NFL who qualified for this statistic, who had enough snaps, had a higher passer rating allowed into his coverage than Devondre Campbell. So the 49ers brought him in to hit. They brought him in to communicate. They certainly didn't bring him in saying this is going to be a great cover guy at this stage of his career based on the data, right? And it is supposed to be a temporary measure. They do hope that Dre Greenlaw returns this year. They are trying to work D. Winters into the mix. All of these things are relevant to the discussion. Why am I not concerned about special teams? I mean, I literally have a video the other day where I said the 49ers special teams was atrocious. Didn't I say somebody come help Brock Purdy and Jawan Jennings? Didn't I say that the offense is the only unit that's playing above average football right now and the 49ers need more balance? I mean, I've been harping on special teams for a long, long time. They've had big issues throughout some of these years. 2021, that was an old coordinator under Richard Hightower, but special teams blew a few games. And then this past one, yes, special teams was a huge issue. It was a big issue against Minnesota the week before. I do think it's extremely concerning. I don't know what else to tell you, though, other than the 49ers had to punt better, cover the punt better. They need to prevent the punt from getting blocked. And Jake Moody, I mean, he was just a little bit off. He kicked it straight from the hash. He's got to add a little English, a little angle to his kick. If one of those three things happens in this game this past Sunday, the 49ers probably win. But I don't see what else there is to say about that. You've got to, we're only in week 4 now. So give things some time. Let things blossom. Let things develop. Maybe the 49ers end up having a really good special teams unit. Maybe they had a couple bad luck bounces. They're not quite themselves yet early in this season, but maybe things will turn around as the season progresses. Because my formula for the 49ers is average defense plus special teams that doesn't screw it up is plus an elite offense with a top-level quarterback, which Brock Purdy is. If you have those three, you've got a chance in the league. Now, the better the defense is to pair with it, the better the special teams is to pair with it. If they're better than average, well, that means that I think you're a true Super Bowl contender. You could increase your chances of being the team that stands at the very end. But we saw Patrick Mahomes in 2019 with a mediocre defense beat the 49ers in the Super Bowl. So who's to say San Francisco, even though there's been some defensive erosion, can't do the same with a player as good as Brock Purdy? You just have to make sure that erosion is not too severe. Dave says, what I don't understand is why is Kyle saying that Cowing isn't ready yet? I would think it has something to do with blocking. Everybody, I think, is overthinking this. They're like, oh, why is he playing Ronnie Bell instead of Cowing? Is it because Cowing missed parts of the offseason due to, he's obviously the hamstring, but he's a rookie. Is he not fully in tune with the playbook yet? I think, yeah, all of those things, there's some validity there, but it just is tiresome to continue harping on them. The big thing for me is blocking has always been so important for Shanahan at the receiver position. And if he feels that Cowing still needs to strengthen up a little bit, and he feels that Ronnie Bell with a year in an NFL weight room is doing what he needs to from the run blocking standpoint, that's who's going to get the nod. So I don't think Cowing is too small to block. I think Cowing actually has some nice muscle on him. He's a thicker body than Ray McLeod. But a lot of this is just getting acclimated. Take your time. Get ready to be on the field. And he's a rookie. So I think that's why things might be going a little more slowly. Why don't we just wait and see this unfold? It always kind of gets me when people are like, well, Shanahan, should have done this, should have done that. He's got way more data points than even I have on this situation. So it's not always as simple as it appears on the outside. Do I think that Purdy will ever get the respect that he deserves? Well, he deserves a hell of a lot of respect because he's at the top of all of these lists. Oh, I opened the wrong one. Let's stop that screen share. And now we have to open another one. Here we go. Look at that. Top of this list. Top of this list. Upper right corner of this one. The data shows that Purdy should be getting a whole lot more respect. Whether or not that respect comes through remains to be seen. But I think that the tide is shifting in a way for Brock Purdy. I think that, last year when I was the first to come out and say, hey, Brock Purdy's playing at an MVP level. Hey, Brock Purdy's number 1 in QBR. I obviously got a lot of blowback from that. I was right at the end of the day, so it's fine. But it was interesting to sit back and notice how offended people were by me suggesting that Brock Purdy was really good. Now, what we started last year, the kind of the rational analysis of Brock Purdy from a spot of, okay, we understand quarterback play. What started last year as almost like a fringe movement because people didn't want to give him credit has turned, I think, into the mainstream view. The mainstream view now, if you turn on ESPN, if you turn on the NFL Network, wherever you watch, or if you just get on Twitter, somebody has to be a real troll on Twitter to not acknowledge that Brock Purdy is one of the best quarterbacks in the game, because the results have continued pouring in. And despite the goalposts moving, despite people saying, oh, well, he's got to do that now without McCaffrey, without Deebo Samuel, despite all those goalposts moving, Purdy has continued to answer every single question. And at some point, the questioners will just become exhausted of asking the questions. And I think that we're near that. All right, everybody check this out. You're just joining right now. Go to the San Francisco Standard. That's my new job. That's where I work now. And this is my article today. The 49ers have a 305-pound hole to fill. Here's the key to replacing Javon Hargrave. And then you could put in your email address, sign up, or you could even hit the share button right here and go from there. When you hit the share button, then you could text it to people, and you could read all about the strategy I think that the 49ers have working now that they have to make a replacement at that defensive tackle position. So sign up for the Standard and get ready. The 49ers get to play the Patriots and their number 27 defense on Sunday. We're going to preview this game much more heavily throughout tomorrow, Friday, Saturday, and then game time is on Sunday. We'll do a pretty dominant job of doing all that. Everybody hit the subscribe button. Go check out the Standard. And I think we just hit 78,000. So channel is growing extremely quickly. Would like to thank all of you for that. Everybody, we'll talk soon.